Hey, as many of you out there are already aware, we have a lot of first-time gun buyers out there in the gun community now, a lot of new gun owners. And those new gun owners have a lot of questions. Well, like a lot of other channels, I've been trying to do videos to answer those questions for them. And I've also been taking their questions in live chats. Well, I missed one of the questions the other day from a first-time gun owner. And they asked me a question about revolver triggers. And since I missed it in the live chat, I want to answer it now in a video. They told me that they've heard a lot of people talking about staging the trigger on a revolver, and what does that mean and how does it compare to shooting in single action? Are they the same thing? Well, no, they are not the same thing, but they're similar. First off, let's talk about the triggers themselves. There's double action, single action triggers, and there's single action triggers, as most of us already know. Some people have a little trouble telling what the difference is between them, but it's really easy if you think about it. One way to think about it easily is a double action trigger does two things. It both cocks the hammer and releases the hammer with a single pull of the trigger. In a single action trigger, you have to cock the hammer manually, and all the trigger does is release the hammer. It does not actually cock the hammer in any way. That's the difference between double action, and single action. Now, you can have double action only, where you can only cock the hammer and release the hammer with the trigger, and you cannot manually cock it. In that case, it's just double action only. It's double action, single action if you can do both a regular double action pull, and you can also cock it and fire it single action. Now, where staging the trigger comes in is when you want to fire with that lighter trigger pull of the single action, but you don't have a hand free to cock the hammer. If you're going to have a hand free, you can cock the hammer and you can shoot single action. But if you're not wanting to do that every time, like at the range or something, you can stage the trigger. Now, what staging the trigger means is you just don't pull the trigger all the way to the rear. You don't pull it hard enough to actually fire the gun. You pull to a certain point and you stop. At this point, the trigger cycles the cylinder and pulls the hammer back, but it does not release it. Now, you have to learn how to feel for that yourself, to where you pull back just enough, rotate the cylinder, cock the hammer, and then you get yourself on target, you pull the trigger the rest of the way, and you fire. And you have that lighter, more single action-like trigger pull. Now, this is great for range shooting. And it makes it a lot easier to hit your target without actually having to have a hand free to thumb the hammer. So a lot of people will stage the trigger at the range with a revolver. If you're shooting for accuracy, that's something you might want to do if you're not wanting to shoot in single action. But that's really all it is. It's kind of like a compromise between double action and single action. It doesn't really have a place in self-defense. I would never stage the trigger in a self-defense shooting because you're probably going to be a little stronger than you think you are when you're upset, and you're not going to successfully stop in time to stage that trigger. So in a self-defense situation, if you want that light trigger pull, you're going to have time, hopefully, to cock that hammer. If not, you're just going to want to fire in double action. So it is something you will probably just use for the range and target practice, but that right there, that's what it means to stage the trigger on a revolver.